Good evening, everyone. I'm Juju Chang in for Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We begin with the disturbing new report from the Department of Justice regarding sexual abuse against children. In the wake of the Larry Nassar scandal, the FBI pledged something like this would never happen again. But the new watchdog report found flaws still exist in how the FBI handles child sex abuse cases. The department's inspector general found that 42 of the 327 sexual abuse cases reviewed were plagued with serious problems, including lack of coordination with local law enforcement and a failure to follow up on leads requiring immediate attention. Nassar was first accused in early 2015, but was not arrested until late 2016. And in that window, abused dozens of girls and women. Now he is in prison after molesting hundreds of his patients, including Olympians Simone Biles and Aly Raisman. In 2021, they appeared on Capitol Hill blasting the FBI for mishandling their case.
I don't want another young gymnast, Olympic athlete, or any individual to experience the horror that I and hundreds of others have endured before, during, and continuing to this day in the wake of the Larry Nassar abuse. To be clear,
Take your time.
To be clear, I blame Larry Nassar, and I also blame an entire system that enabled and perpetrated his abuse.
It took over 14 months for the FBI to contact me, despite my many requests to be interviewed by them. Nassar found more than 100 new victims to molest. It was like serving innocent children up to a pedophile on a silver platter.
And those were clearly emotional points of testimony from both Simone Biles and Aly Raisman. And joining me now is the attorney for those women representing survivors of the sexual assaults by Larry Nassar, John Manley. You've represented these women for more than a decade, and you're with the firm Manley, Stewart and Finaldi. Thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
I know you've read through the report. Were you surprised by what it unveiled and how persistent these problems are, despite all the promises to do better?
Yeah, it's stunningly bad. And I was at that hearing, and Director Wray said something I think is really relevant, which is you judge a great organization not by the mistakes they make, but by how they correct them. And given that this report focused on cases for the last 3 years, I'd say it's not corrected. In fact, it's a failure. And, you know, FBI bills itself as the premier law enforcement agency in the United States. And the truth is, when it comes to child protection, it's just not, and it's failing, and it's got to change.
Aly Raisman mentions the systemic change that's necessary. Is there a part of the report that disturbs you the most about the lack of systemic change?
Well, I think the thing that disturbs me the most is it establishes there was a child that was molested because FBI didn't act, which is precisely why those two women, you know, emotionally told their story in front of a U.S. Senate panel. They didn't have to. They weren't subpoenaed. They went there because they wanted it to stop, and it hasn't. It's ironic it's within 3 weeks of Simone Biles' performance at the Olympics. She did her job. Why can't FBI do it?
The report talks about a lack of coordination within the FBI. It also talks about underfunding when they ask for backup, that some of these agents are just understaffed. Do you buy that as an argument?
No, I think it's nonsense. I think that there's a cultural problem at FBI that's existed for years, which doesn't give these cases priority. I think that if agents were told, listen, when a child is in danger, you act, they do it. I think at this point, the only thing that can be done is for legislation to be passed that every FBI field office in the United States and abroad have a dedicated officer to child protection who ensures this doesn't fall through the cracks. And it doesn't matter how many tax cheats you catch or securities fraudsters. if you're allowing children to be molested, and that's what's happening. And it's
Have
wrong.
you had a chance? Sorry to interrupt you, John, but have you had a chance yet to talk to any of the survivors you represent? I would imagine that this is just another gut punch.
It's a gut punch. It's you know, it's almost unbelievable that it's been 3 years that since that hearing, and almost 10 years since Larry Nassar, and we're still talking about this. You know, at some point, you know, somebody has to be held accountable here. Nobody's gone to jail for this. Nobody's been held accountable except one agent was fired in the entire agency. When is somebody going to do something to stop this?
The
FBI
FBI had faced a pretty severe fine 3 years ago. What do you think needs to happen now to create that culture shift that you alluded to?
I think some heads need to roll. I think that, you know, FBI agents are mandatory reporters under federal law in most states. In the report, in 53% of the cases, the mandatory report wasn't made. That's a crime. You know, if you start charging mandatory reporters, and that happens all over the country with teachers, et cetera, who fail to report, whether they're FBI agents or not, it'll change. That's the most stunning part of the report is there's no prescription for accountability. There's no prescription for holding people accountable. You know, the FBI holds people accountable every day criminally, and yet here they are committing what amounts to a criminal act and that involves, you know, children being hurt. Enough's enough.
Speaking truth to power, Attorney John C. Manley, thank you, as always, for your time.
Thank you.